started, let's just do a little bit of reviewing, and then we'll pick up where we left off yesterday. So, somebody tell me what the creation mandate is. What is the creation mandate? Natalie.
It was in order that God gave Adam and Eve to grow and fulfill the earth, do it, and have dominion over it.
Okay, so God commanded or told Adam and Eve to have dominion over the earth and to fill the earth. Okay, so what does that have to do with geography? What does that have to do with cultural geography? Morgan?
Well, he told us to fill the earth and take care of it, but how can we do that if we don't know the people or the earth? So that's why we study what we do.
Right, exactly, because God gave us this earth, what we're talking about in geography, he gave us this earth to do something with, and to make it better, and to use it to our advantage, and we're allowed to use all of its resources, whatever they may be, we're allowed to use them to man's advantage. He gave us the dominion over that. So that's really an important precept as we start geography. Okay? What is culture? Don't read me the definition. Somebody tell me what culture is in your own words. Ayla?
Basically a way that people make their world around them.
Okay.
Just basically like forming it to their own kind of like way that they want to do it.
Okay, so she's saying the way people, the world around them, how they make that world around them, the things that they do, the places that they go, the habits that they have, the arts that they are interested in, those kinds of things. Okay, so the habits a group of people use to make something of the world. Okay, all right, and then we talked a little bit yesterday about the fall. I don't mean the season of the year, okay? But what is the fall? When we say the fall, big F, what are we talking about? The fall. Natalie? Okay, so the fall of mankind when he sinned, and then of course redemption that God provided for mankind. Okay, so that's kind of where we left off yesterday. And I do need to have you fix something in your notes because I gave you one wrong piece of information. When I gave you the creation mandate, I had you write down Genesis 1:26. I had it wrong in my notes, and I was corrected yesterday by a student, and that's wonderful. It should be Genesis 1:28. So if you would just write that down. Let me just give you a sheet of paper, and then you can copy it over.
Can I get a piece of paper as well?
Yes. Okay, try to remember to bring your notebook to take notes, okay? So,
Actually, I can go grab that.
I'm sorry, my hearing's not great. Let me come by there and you can tell me again. What?
I just got new notebooks, I can go grab one.
Just take notes on here and then you can transfer it over because we need to keep going, okay? So, so we talked about the fall, okay? But we also talked about that though mankind is sinful and the world's not getting better, that we have made some progress, okay, as far as culture goes. We're not still cavemen or whatever. We know that in the end, we as Christians will end up in a heavenly city where it will be perfect, okay? But in this world, there's always going to be imperfection because we had the fall and because we are sinful people. So, we talked about that. Today I want to pick up with the thought that in your reading from the other day, and then we're going to start some new material here shortly, about the flood, okay? Why do you think we need to talk about the flood as we begin our discussion about geography? The flood changed the whole geography of the world, yes, absolutely, okay? So, again, I'm assuming that you guys know some things, but let's just make sure that we're all on the same page. We know that there was a man named Noah. It hadn't rained on the earth before. Now, the earth was watered in a way, but there hadn't been rainfall from the sky. And God, yes. I mean, there was watering on the earth, but not rain as we know it. And so, God told Noah to build this boat in the middle of the desert, basically, and, there wasn't a body of water, and he just followed God's command, and he built this boat, and then God sends this torrential rain for 40 days. Of course, going back, I guess, God told Noah to bring his family on board and anybody that would come, but nobody believed him, and then 2 of each kind of animal to preserve that. And then, of course, it rains and floods the earth, and everything was destroyed that wasn't on the ark. But when that flood happened, it changed. I mean, have you ever, we know, because last year, most of us, I don't know everybody, but I think most of us were living in this area, was it last year or 2 years ago? I guess it was just a year ago, when we had that big flood, okay? It changed some things, didn't it? I mean, it changed. If you went over by the Missouri River and saw it then and see it now, it's different a little bit, okay? There's more sand and it's different. It changed the earth, but that was only a small flood in comparison to a worldwide flood that flooded the whole earth. And so it changed things. And we'll probably talk about some of that. If you were in science last year, you know that we talked about some of the changes that took place when you look at the rock structures and things, but we're not going to get into that right now. But the flood was a result of sin, and God changes the geography of the earth through the flood. But God promised he would never send a worldwide flood again, and he promised that the earth would be habitable so he could work out his plan of redemption. And so then, again, we're kind of going back in history. We have the Tower of Babel. Who can tell me about the Tower of Babel? Donald? Okay, so I don't know if you could all hear him, and I'm repeating some of what you're saying mainly for the camera because we have Josiah listening in, and he probably can't hear all of this. So Donald told us that the men of the earth built this tower to go to the sky. Their idea was to kind of become almost godlike. When we build this tower, we can do anything. And so God doesn't want them to do that, and so he says, okay, I'm going to confound the languages and scatter you. When he confounded their languages. What does that mean when we say confound the language? What does that mean? Sarah?
He changed all their languages so they were all
Right, he changed. They used to speak all one language, and now suddenly Riley and I are speaking English, and then God changes our language, and now Riley's speaking Spanish and I'm speaking English, and we don't understand each other. I mean, it was like instantaneous, which is kind of crazy when we think about it, but again, we know God can do anything. And he did that because he wanted people to scatter, and he wanted people to have to kind of start over in a way, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that every single person had a different language, but everybody didn't speak the same language. I don't know how many languages there were, the Bible doesn't tell us, but he confounded the languages so everybody didn't speak the same language. So all the people that spoke, I don't know, I'm saying Spanish, I'm sure it probably wasn't at that time, but Spanish went in one direction, and all the people that spoke French, again, I don't know what languages there were. It was probably not French or English or Spanish as we know it today, but because languages do evolve. But anyway, he sends them out. They go, and that changed the culture of the world, because now we have different people. And so then we have, at the last section of the reading that you guys did, we have Abraham. What do you guys know about Abraham? Can you tell me something you know about Abraham? Grace?
He's the father of many nations.
Father of many nations. But at this time, there was only one nation, okay? And God tells him, makes a promise to him, actually 3 promises. Does anybody know one?
Land, seed, and blessing.
Sorry?
Land, seed, and blessing.
Okay, good. Okay, so he promised him he would give him his seed, he would give him descendants, as many as the stars in the sky. Now, that doesn't happen overnight, okay? But he had 12 sons, and then they had children and children, and pretty soon there was a lot of his descendants. He promised he would bless the whole earth through him, and he promised that he would give him a special land that would be a nation. What land did God promise to Abraham? Lordy? Pardon?
Canaan.
Canaan, which we know today as Israel. Okay? And the people of Canaan, or the people of Israel, are known as the what are the people of Israel? We call them Israelites, yes, but another name that we give them is the Jewish people or Jews, yes. So the Jewish people or the Jews, so the people of Israel, he promised him that he would give them this land, which we know today as Israel, and that they would become a great people, which we know today as the Jews, okay? So they were God's chosen people. God told them, and he gave them a bunch of laws. And basically he tells them, if you follow my laws, I'm giving you all these laws, if you follow these, then you're going to be blessed in a great way. And if you don't, then there's going to be some consequences. And so his idea was that all these laws were going to make them such a great people. And then all the other nations would look at Israel, would look at Canaan, and they would say, whoa, I want to be like that. And then they would say, why are you like that? And they would say, because God has blessed us, and all the world would want to the God of the Jews to be their God. So that was God's way of spreading his love and showing that he is God. But we know that Israel did not obey very well, did not obey all the time. And so part of their judgment for their sin was what? What is one way when in our reading that we see that God judged Israel? What's one of the big things that he did to judge them, Morgan?
He let other nations take them over.
Good. Okay, so they were taken over by other nations. They were invaded by other nations, and they were in some cases and sometimes exiled. They were driven out of their land. And we know that actually, I think it was in 1940, I want to say 5, might have been 47, sometime in that rough area. It was only then that Israel has come back as a nation, because they were not a nation before then. So, I mean, they were, and then they weren't. So they've been in and out of their country for a long time. And even now, they're still fighting over some of the land in Israel. When I was there in 2012, we didn't see fighting or anything, but if you go into Palestine, you just cross over, there's a whole different group of people, and they really don't get along very well, and there's borders, and there's still a lot of contention over that. If you ever watch the news, you'll see that, and you probably know that there's a lot of contention, and it all dates back to this time when the Jewish people did not follow God's laws, and so therefore he couldn't bless them and he had to judge them. So that takes us up to where we are. So you should have so far just some terms in your notes. Yes?
We didn't finish the term for culture.
You didn't finish the term for, oh, that's right, we're right in the middle of the term for culture. So let's go ahead and finish that. You have, I think, up through, let me see what I marked here.
Religious.
Lingual, I think, social.
Religious. The religious.
Oh, okay, so we have a people's way of life, including their political, economic, religious, lingual, Lingual. Lingual, social, intellectual, and artistic practices and beliefs. So the people's way of life, including their political, economic, religious, lingual, Lingual, social, intellectual, and artistic practices and beliefs. I think I picked up with you guys where I left off with 1B, and I think we missed a little bit of stuff in there, but I think we're good. Because we kind of went back and reviewed, so I think we're good. Okay, so so that takes us up to our reading, and so you should have the terms geography, creation mandate, and culture for terms, okay? And you probably, let's write down a couple other things just for your notes. Write down the fall, and this isn't really going to be a definition, basically just an idea here. When sin entered the world, okay? The fall, when sin entered the world. And then just write down the flood changed the geography of the world. Okay, and then let's write down Abraham was promised by God a special land. Abraham was promised by God a special land known as today as Israel. Abraham was promised by God a special land today known as Israel. And the people are known as the Jews. We're going to go ahead and pick up on page 6 and do some reading together. So Morgan, you can go ahead and shut that off because he's not going to be